When I was writing Guardian Devil, I killed off a character called Karen Page. Now, this was a character who nobody really cared about at that point in the books. I mean, A, nobody cared about Daredevil. It wasn't selling. And B, people didn't really care about Karen anymore. You know, Daredevil had had affairs, of course, with Elektra and Typhoid Mary and, you know, any number of chicks. He was kind of a pussy hound of sorts in the comics, which was another really kind of interesting aspect of his character that set him apart from most superheroes. So we killed her off, man, and you would have thought that we, you know, killed Christ. It was insane, the kind of reaction that people had to it, the bad reaction people had. You know, how dare you kill off a character who's been around longer than you, that character's older than you. And it's like, hey man, nobody, you know, cared about the character lately to begin with. But it proves that you should never go mucking with comics continuity. You know, boy, you tend to tick off people you didn't even know existed. When we were working on Guardian Devil, I had zero interest in touching Elektra. It was bad enough we were touching Daredevil, which, you know, we'd all felt was Frank's character and will forever be Frank's character. So that was a dark enough, long enough shadow to kind of work in without having to bring Elektra into it as well. And I felt too that Frank had done, you know, the Elektra Lives Again graphic novel, which nobody was ever sure whether it was canon or not, whether it was part of the continuity or not. But in that book, you know, Elektra was very clearly dead. Elektra was Frank's character, unlike, you know, Daredevil or the Kingpin, or even Bullseye. Frank created Elektra, it was his character. So Joe's position and my position as well was like, Frank says she's dead, she's dead. You know, Frank killed her in one of his storylines, and that's that. I mean, you know, it's one thing to go into the closet and put on your dad's clothes. It's another thing to fuck your dad's wife. And that's kind of what I felt like, you know, about Elektra. It's one thing to go and play in the Daredevil universe, but then to add insult to injury and be like, I'm gonna do Elektra too. No, forget it. The kind of interesting backstory or subplot involving his mother, Maggie, you know, who kind of left him as a kid and apparently joined a convent. I mean, that was fantastic to me because, you know, I was raised Catholic. So I was, oh my God, he's more or less, he's a Catholic superhero. You know, he's not a dude going to church every Sunday and whatnot and receiving the host, but had a very, very Catholic streak running through him. But I really appreciated that and played with that a lot more in my storyline, you know, actually putting him into the confessional and whatnot. Really steeped it a bit more in Catholicism because it lent itself to it based on the work that had gone before. And I think the kind of Catholic angst, or the angst that comes along with being Catholic or raised Catholic, was quite obvious in that character and inherent to how powerful that character is or can be. I was in the midst, and still am in the midst of doing this Daredevil Bullseye Target book. The first issue came out, I wrote the first issue December 2001. And the book came out, you know, what, 3 months ago, 3 months ago. And I still haven't even written issue 2. You know, that's bad, that's horrible. And by the time this DVD comes out, God willing, it'll be done. Quesada said, well, nobody's gonna do the Daredevil Bullseye story until you do it. I'm not gonna let those two characters get together again unless you write it. I said, you don't make that, you don't wanna say that. I mean, I'm flattered, but he's like, no, I promise. Says nobody's going to do it except you. Excuse me. So one day I read that Bendis is going to do that story at the culmination of one of his arcs. And I called up Quesada and I was just like, hey man, I guess somebody's doing that Daredevil Bullseye story. And he said, oh, I forgot. It's kind of a blunder on my behalf. And I was sorry that I called him up, I'm sorry now, I wasn't sorry then, because at that time I was just like, you said it was me. And it was one of those things that in life where, you know, you get older and hopefully mature as every day goes by, but it was more about keeping a dude to his word than it was me wanting to tell a story. And not the best way to go about a project, to go about any project. You know, you never want to write a story unless you're inspired to write a story. You don't want to write it just because, like, well, I should write it, right? Because the last time they met was on my watch and I should do the follow-up to it. So it was kind of a blunder, kind of a big blunder. And I wish I hadn't done it, but I did it. So now I have to finish Target because I took the character out of Brian's hands. But the thing that you really can't get across to a non-comic book reader or to the general public is what a fascinating and kind of layered character Daredevil is, and that's based on his internal monologues that the book has usually been famous for. What goes on in his head, the flaws. And that's not very simple as going like, this is a dude who wears a cape and a cowl and he fights a dude named the Joker. You know, that's visually kind of interesting, and it rises and falls right there. Daredevil, you can't just hold up a picture and get people excited. They have to kind of give it a test drive for themselves. Daredevil has always kind of been the Grateful Dead of comics, right? You know, he's always had hardcore fans who'd follow him everywhere, anywhere, but you know, he didn't have the breakthrough playability of the Rolling Stones or the Beatles. So I think the movie will definitely break him through into the mainstream, hopefully for better, not for worse, and maybe that will then bring a bunch of people in the comic book stores to go back and read some of the character-defining work that's made him such a great comic book character for years.